Welcome to the NFP podcast, where we explore the empowering world of natural family planning. I'm Amy Smith. Join me and my co-host Emily Appledorn each week. Together, we're here to dive deep into the science, the stories, and the spirituality behind NFP. Every week, we push back against the free love culture and advocate for a culture of responsible love, where intentionality and respect are at the forefront of family planning. Join us as we discuss everything from the practicalities of charting and fertility awareness to the profound impact NFP can have on relationships and communities. Whether you're new to NFP or a seasoned pro, our podcast is your go-to resource for honest conversations, expert insights, and real-life experiences. So grab a friend, settle in, and get ready to be inspired. This is the NFP podcast. All right, guys, welcome back to the podcast.
Hi, everyone.
Emily and I are really excited. This evening, we are joined by Louise Boychuk. She is with us from Canada, and she is a Marquette teacher here to share with us about her journey to NFP, the world of NFP, because everyone has a cool journey to get there, and also her work, her professional work as a Marquette teacher. So welcome, Louise, to the NFP podcast.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
We're very glad you're here. And I'm going to kind of be looking down just for a few minutes, everyone, because Moses is nursing. So I just want to, don't feel like I have like this random twitch now that I just keep looking away from the screen. But Louise, why don't you start introducing yourself to the audience? Who are you and how did you become an NFP teacher and how did you get involved in NFP? You know, kind of as early back as you want to go.
Okay, we can start at the beginning. So I'm Louise. I'm a Marquette instructor. I'm a nurse. So to be a Marquette instructor, you have to be a doctor, a nurse, a healthcare provider. So that's kind of where it all started, was with my degree. When I first started working as a nurse, I was working on neurotrauma, which is like all the head injuries, spinal cord injuries, like anything that hits the newspaper is what I was taking care of. When my husband and I got married, we started doing Billings, which is a mucus-only method. And we just had a really hard time with it. I was working shift work. And like, what's the end of day if you don't have an end of day? Like, it just was a lot of like, wait a minute, this is not made for someone who's working nights or who's going back and forth between days and nights. And so we ended up, it just was a lot of abstinence, which, that happens with NFP sometimes. And then we had a surprise Ethan. And so Ethan was our first pregnancy. We conceived him just a couple months after we got married, and we were like, oh, okay, well, that's all right. Like, we were planning on having kids anyways. So we had a surprise Ethan. And then when I was breastfeeding, I just had mucus all the time. And I couldn't figure out, like, what is my body trying to tell me? And I was just so scared of getting pregnant again. And so we ended up just abstaining until my cycle came back. So we abstained for 6 months. And then when my cycle came back, we were like, okay, we can figure this out now because I'm ovulating. And so we started using the Billings again, and we had another surprise pregnancy, Gabe. And I met with my instructor and I was like, this is crazy. Like, how... It's like, both of my pregnancies have been surprises. Like, what are the chances? And she's like, yeah, I don't know. What are the chances? And I was like, no one actually asked. I'm actually asking you, like, what are the chances? Like, how did this happen? Because we can't keep having a baby every year. This is not sustainable, right? And so I just felt like I wasn't getting really clear answers from her. And so I started just asking my friends who weren't having babies every year how they were pulling that off. And they were all doing Marquette. So that's how I found out about Marquette, was like just through the mom circles. That was... How old is Gabe? He's 11. So that was like 11 years ago. And at that time, the instructions for Marquette were just available on the Marquette website. So you could just like read it and learn it. And so I self-taught Marquette. I didn't even know that there were instructors actually. And so we started doing Marquette, and we were like so close to doing it right, but not quite. And we had no idea because we didn't have an instructor behind us telling us, hey, that's not quite right. And we ended up pregnant again with another surprise pregnancy. So that was our third pregnancy in 3 years. That pregnancy resulted in a miscarriage at 18 weeks. It was related to, I got assaulted by one of my patients and I got a really bad concussion and we miscarried the baby. And I was just devastating. It was like just so it was hard for us because like as Catholics, we're open to life, right? And we're like, we will take this baby. Like we did not plan for this baby. We didn't really want this baby right now, but like we'll take it. That's okay. And so we had the past 18 weeks just worked so hard to just like grapple with this pregnancy that like we felt so unprepared for. And then we lost the baby. And we were like, what are you doing, God? Like, this is not fair. And we were just mad and we felt like we were just free falling. And I felt like we were on a course that was not sustainable, right? And so at that point, at the time of the miscarriage, my husband and I decided we were ready for another baby because we had already like emotionally prepared for this surprise pregnancy. And so we decided to get pregnant. So that was our only intended pregnancy, was Nora, who's now 9.5. And when I was pregnant with Nora, I decided I should just do the Marquette training. You have to be a doctor or a nurse. I was already a nurse. And like, really, I did the training very selfishly just because the Boychuks needed to figure out how to not have another pregnancy right away. And so I started doing the training. I just really wanted to like so understand the reasons behind the rules. And so I started doing the training when Nora was born. We started doing Marquette properly. And that's when I started teaching also. And when I was teaching, I was not planning on really being like a Marquette teacher. I was planning on just like I would teach my friends, and like really I was really just doing the training so that we knew how to avoid pregnancy. And then people started reaching out to learn the method, and I was like, well, I mean, I guess I can teach you. I'm an instructor. So I started teaching, and then I had some people reach out from the US that wanted to learn, and I was like, I don't know, like international teaching, that's interesting. So I kind of looked into it and got all my ducks in a row and started teaching couples in the US. And so it's just kind of, my NFP journey has been very bumpy and it's been very frustrating at times. And it's been interesting. But it's also like looking back on it. And I know I'm not done yet. Like I still have to get through perimenopause, but looking back on it, just like seeing all the times when we were like, what is happening? And then being able to reflect on that now and see like God was taking us through a really tricky season, and he was like really refining the parts of us that needed to be refined in that season. And it's really benefiting us now, but it was so uncomfortable when it was happening. So that's kind of a medium length story of our NFP story.
Oh, that's so beautiful. Thank you for sharing all that. I'm so sorry for the loss too, and the trauma around the loss
Right.
outside of the actual pregnancy. I think that is something I have learned over the years now, is to approach individuals who I know get pregnant outside of an actual act of trying to get pregnant, and it's kind of a surprise, and they go through a little bit of an emotional shock and frustration of like, this is not the timing we were thinking of, and then they miscarry within the first trimester, and the feelings are just, then it's a different type of sorrow and sadness, and you feel guilt and shame. You didn't want, at first you didn't want this baby, but now this baby's not going to be here. And so that's I don't know, like common as far as percentage wise, but I'd say like people that go through that experience, that is a very common emotional response that I have heard. So I'm sure so many people can relate to your experience of what you shared. I know Emily and I have heard on the podcast, we've had another NFP teacher from Boston, and she had something similar happen that led her into it, was her own experience with NFP of getting pregnant when she was like, I shouldn't be pregnant. I followed these rules. Why did that not happen? Or why did that happen? Maybe you did say a couple times that you started doing the Marquette Method or using the Marquette Method. Maybe now we can, not to totally segue from your story, because I know if Emily, you want to ask for anything or comment, but let's just clarify, like, what does that mean? So Billings, you said this is cervical mucus method, like, and then you started quote unquote doing Marquette. What does that mean? You're doing Marquette?
So Marquette is a high-tech calendar method. So there's different kinds of methods, right? There's Billings, Creighton, symptothermal, what else? Boston Crosscheck, FEM. And they're all we're all looking at the cycle, but we're looking at the cycle from a slightly different angle and perspective. And so the way that Marquette looks at the cycle is primarily through urinary hormone testing. So we use the Clearblue monitor. Some people use the Mira monitor. Some people use ovulation tests. But what we're really looking at is your LH, your luteinizing hormone, and your estrogen. Those are the two hormones that we focus the most on. There's also options with Marquette to add in mucus and temps and things like that. But I would say like the lion's share of my clients they're just using the monitor on not the monitor on its own, but the monitor in conjunction with Marquette. So we use the monitor as a tool to measure your hormone levels. And you take the information from the monitor and you plug it into the Marquette rules to figure out which days are available and which days are not available. And the rules will be different depending on what season of fertility you're in. If you've just had a baby and you're breastfeeding and your cycle hasn't come back, that's going to look really different than if you're a cycling woman. And so we have different protocols for different seasons. But Marquette primarily is using the Clear Blue monitor.
So I'm so curious, and Emily, I'm not sure if you were thinking this too, but I'm so curious now, knowing what you know, and you look back at your experiences getting pregnant those times. What do you know what happened, or do you understand like, oh, well, we weren't given this instruction, or, oh, I didn't quite understand that instruction, or, just faulty like user error, right? Of like, no, I think I kind of understood that, or it wasn't really, or I kind of checked it, or I didn't really check it. So anyway, what was your reflection upon those?
I know exactly where those babies came from. So we used we used a dry day in the pre-ovulatory time, and I ovulated shortly after that. And so it just wasn't enough. Like we just weren't abstaining soon enough in the cycle to avoid pregnancy. That's what happened with both of them.
But you didn't see mucus on those days.
Correct. That's correct.
So according to the mucus only direction, that's a day of infertility.
That's correct.
But that was also when you were kind of doing shift work, so you didn't know really end of the day. Is that right?
Well, we took the more conservative route. Like we would, if I was working a night shift, we would wait until the end of day. So like we'd wait until the morning. So yeah, we were following the instructions. Like they were deemed to be perfect use pregnancies with Billings, which is why with my instructor, I was like, wow, what are the chances? But not super reassuring to talk to her about that. But we were using the method perfectly, and we conceived 2 times.
Okay, so I have to ask, if you have a memory of I don't know, because I'm sitting here troubleshooting but Amy just read my mind. Like I'm thinking, many things. Do you feel like you saw peak type mucus before that dry day?
No, definitely not. Yeah,
wow.
Definitely not. It was like day with Ethan probably day 8, and with Gabe probably day 9 that we used. So we were really surprised when we got pregnant. It was really surprising to us. I don't know, like what I've found, I could be wrong, this is just my observation. What I've found is when I have women who come to me, they want to do Marquette because they've had a surprise pregnancy with another method, I always just like so empathize with them. But what I find is that if the body has defied the odds of one method, it's kind of likely to defy the odds of another method too, right? And so I take that really seriously. When people come and they've had a perfect use pregnancy, I'm like, okay, what, like all the questions, right? Like what happened? Like show me your chart, show me where you got pregnant. Did you meet with an instructor? Did they say it was a perfect use pregnancy? And like knowing what we know from how this all unfolded, should we make the method more conservative, or is it okay as prescribed? So that's just kind of a side trail, but
yeah, that's just fascinating. Thank you for sharing all that.
Yeah,
it really does make my mind spin.
So in my mind though, I'm just thinking like, but we know we need mucus to have a baby because sperm have to get to the fallopian tube for conception. So unless the science has changed on that, like that mucus is essential for pregnancy. So if you're not observing mucus, this is something I always had a question about with Creighton too, is like, if you're not observing mucus, but you get pregnant, like in this case, okay, then what, like, is the mucus like stuck? It's not coming out? And then in those cases, like, what do we do for women who are not observing mucus, but they get pregnant? So we know mucus is there.
Right.
What do you say, Louise?
I'm not a mucus expert. I'm just going to give.
We need to get mucus expert on the podcast. This is like very interesting. I mean, so many women probably like this.
This is my thoughts. I could be wrong, but these are my thoughts. Think about how teeny tiny a sperm is. Think about like the tiniest amount of mucus is needed to sustain that sperm, right? Like it could be that they're using a dry day, and like there is mucus present in the cervix and like right at the opening of the cervix that the woman hasn't observed yet, even if she's like bearing down to try and catch that mucus. It's possible that there's like the tiniest bit of mucus that's hospitable to that sperm. That's my theory of how it happened. And so with Marquette, we call it a high-tech calendar method. So we're using like technology, we're using a fertility monitor to track your hormones, but we also use an algorithm. So if a woman is in regular cycles, we have a day of absolute abstinence. In that cycle, we'll say start abstaining on this day, unless you get a high before that, the high would trump that. And so it's worked into the method because we know that sometimes the monitor won't give you enough of a heads up you're about to ovulate. Sometimes your mucus doesn't give you enough of a heads up, as evidenced by Ethan and Gabe. And so we factor it in. And so I think that's a part of the saving grace with Marquette.
It's so interesting, Louise, because in this world, I hear a lot of people, and in a great way, talking about cervical fluid and how it's a great indicator of health and it's something good to observe. And I agree. I think I don't hear, and maybe I'm just not privy to those conversations, kind of the behind the scenes of these people who create methods, or even, something I could reach out to the Institute for Restorative Reproductive Medicine, because I'd like to know if anyone's doing research about this. But to look at these cases, like, okay, who is analyzing these cycles with perfect use pregnancies? Because it's not so much of like because this is now we want to, disprove all this biology we know to be true and that supports natural family planning use. It's more like, this is pretty fascinating. You guys are telling us we need sperm, eggs, and cervical fluid to make a baby. And she's not seeing cervical fluid, but she's making babies. So why isn't she seeing it? Like, what's happening? And what is the timeline for things? And like, to your point, especially in a pre-ovulation time, right? We're waiting for ovulation to start. We're waiting for those follicles to reach maturity enough for her cervical fluid to be at a certain level for prevalence of the cervical fluid. And so it's just like, well, yeah, what if we catch it the day before the follicle gets to the point that the cervical fluid's going to now come out? You know what I mean? Like, I kind of want to know the nitty gritty a little bit more. Anyway, yeah.
And can I, just for anyone watching, not to cut you off if you had something to mention there, Louise, in response to Amy, but can I just interject in case someone's listening and they're thinking like me before you ever mentioned the cycle day? I'm thinking, oh, peak +3. I'm thinking, oh, I was a peak +3 ovulator. Like, I bet that's what it was. And so can you just like dispel that idea for anyone it was, like you said, it was all pre-peak.
Pre-ovulatory. Yeah.
That is just wild. It really is. It really does get you thinking when you're in this world, like you just want to make sense of it. But would you say, or would you not, in times like this, like, there are people that do NFP for non-religious reasons. I get that. But the fair majority, I would venture to say, are doing it for some sort of religious component. And because of that, there's that part of this journey that you are like, golly, we can do everything we can to control, quote unquote control, but ultimately God is in control. And it's just like you said, perhaps there was mucus that just got missed, or perhaps, I mean, like we don't know. And that's, to me, that's the beauty of using a natural method, right? Like the Holy Spirit can get in there and do whatever he wants to do. And, people will argue, oh, he can do that even on the birth control pill. And I get that too. But this is just a perfect example of like God had this desire for your family, and he was using these instances to lead you to where you are today, even regardless. Like, it's really just something to really just ponder. So,
and like my husband and I, we're, parenting is not fun sometimes, but we would never give our kids back, right? Like, we always love the kids that we have, and we're like, it's just crazy to think that like, if that sperm and that egg hadn't met, that child would never exist. It would be a different child, right? And so it's just really like, I don't know. I think it's really humbling to think about that. But I do have two things to say about what you've said. So one of them is, yes, like openness to life. Yes, like God can create a baby. Like, obviously we have to have sex, but like God is like really the decider of whether a baby gets created or not. But I sometimes when I'm talking to NFP people, it's this like, oh, like this beautiful openness to life, but like a little bit dismissive of like the seriousness to avoid pregnancy. Like some people, it is like life or death, or it is like she's going to lose her mind if she has another baby. And like, that's really serious. And so I think that if people are struggling, and this is, I just like, there is no NFP method that is perfect for everyone. I think that's just so important for everyone to know, everyone to acknowledge, and everyone to like live that truth, is that some people will struggle with mucus. Some people will struggle to get good temps. Some people just don't like Marquette. And so that's okay. And some people, a specific method has failed them, and it's okay to switch to a different method, right? It's like, okay, looking at my body from this angle, it didn't go well for me. So I want to look at it from a different angle. And so I think it's important in NFP circles to just always be talking about, you know, like open to life, your baby's a blessing, but like, are you feeling so frustrated that you want to scream? And if you are, then like maybe consider a different NFP method, and that's okay, right? You don't have to stick with it if it's not working. So that's my thoughts on that.
You would never want someone to quit using a natural method purely because one method failed them. I say that a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. The best method is the method that works best for you.
Yeah.
So this is why, Emily, you're going to be a saint before I am, because what I was thinking actually in hearing about this, you know, pre-ovulation baby making, we're following all the rules, is I was actually thinking completely different. I was thinking maybe the Lord, obviously he creates life. Okay. Yes. Full stop. And maybe this is an opportunity for us to, as professionals in this field, and I'm not the medical professional or the researcher, to be like, okay, guys, maybe he's drawing our attention to something also to say, you guys are missing something. You're missing something. You have all these rules, yet women are still getting pregnant. And so instead of just, I think sometimes everyone's going to like get hate on me for saying this, but I think sometimes we might use the whole, well, God just really wanted you to have the baby as almost like a cop out for us to not follow through and do some more digging and research and be accountable. Does that make sense?
It does.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know how many people just like tuned out or like, you're not really Catholic, Amy, for saying something like that. But yeah, I feel like that sometimes, you know, it's like, oh, well, it's a lot easier to just say, well, God really wanted you to have the baby, you know, and meanwhile, Louise is sitting there like, no, but really, what are the odds? Like, what are the odds? I'm genuinely asking you. And it's like, I don't know. God must just really want you to have that baby. And I'm like, okay, it's not helpful.
That's a really good point.
I mean, I'll take the baby, but I don't know. That's not really helpful.
Yeah, I agree with you. And like God has given us the ability to think and reason. And that I think like that is exactly like we're looking at a situation where like, what happened here? Like what went, I don't want to say like a pregnancy is wrong, but like what went wrong? What went sideways where this baby came to be when it shouldn't have? And what do we have to learn from it? And if you think about Humanae Vitae, there's a call out to the scientists saying like, keep exploring this, find methods that work for women. And I think that like our job is not even close to being done yet. And so Marquette instructors, just, I'm not sure what the other protocols are for other methods, but with Marquette, if you have a perfect use pregnancy, you meet with the client, you do a pregnancy evaluation, and then you submit that evaluation to the Boland Institute for NFP. So it was formerly the Marquette Institute for NFP. And they review it and they make sure that yes, it was a perfect use pregnancy. Yes, the instructor is teaching properly. But also like when you are teaching, if you look at a study and the study just has 250 women in it, there's going to be some women that get pregnant. But if you like zoom out and look at everyone who's teaching Marquette, you're going to have like a decent number of pregnancies if 20,000 women are using Marquette over 15 years, right? And so you're going to have like, you're bound to have perfect use pregnancies that happen. And you can learn so much from those perfect use pregnancies and see like, what are the patterns? What are the trends? Is it like something going on in their life that caused them to ovulate earlier? Do we need to be aware of that? Is that something we should be asking on the registration form? Are they changing their diet? Is that, so it changes the way that you approach the client, right? And you go in kind of with these filters on being like, what do I need to be, what flags am I looking for to say like, hey, we should proceed with caution here and take a more conservative approach. Or for the women who are just like so scared they're going to get pregnant, what can we see on their intake form that's really reassuring to us to say, like, I'm expecting you're just going to have a very typical Marquette journey. Like, you don't have to do all these conservative things. You can just do normal Marquette. That's okay. It's going to work. And so I think that is like the ability to think and reason really factors into being an NFP instructor. So I appreciate what you said.
Gosh, I feel so much more convicted about this right now. Like thinking of all the medical people I know and the scientists doing research, I'm going to send them like all emails after we get off this call. Because I'm like, really? I mean, it's fascinating. And I do find it a little bit frustrating to think like, gosh, are we using almost like, what is the expression when you go to confession? Presuming on God's mercy. Are we kind of using that as a cop-out a little bit, right? Like, I don't know. Maybe I'm being extreme in that, but you just hear it so often. And I think for so long, I kind of thought that like, oh, well, I guess, God that's just, God's doing God's thing. And it kind of makes God look stupid in a way to say that now that I think about it. Like,
and I think it comes across as dismissive too to the couple, right? Like they're in crisis. And for someone to just say like, well, God's will is better than our will, that is zero helpful, right?
Zero helpful, right?
If you meet with them, you say like, wow, like this shouldn't have happened. Like you followed all the rules. What are we going to learn from this? Like when you have your baby, what are we going to do differently next time so that we can help kind of like this circumstance from happening again? So that's the approach that I take with my women, just because I've had, I call it NFP trauma, but like I've had NFP trauma with surprise pregnancies. And like, I know that like the gutted feeling that comes along with a surprise pregnancy, you get over it, right? Like I love my kids so much. But it just really like, you just feel like you're going to barf. And that is not like, there is just like not anything that an NFP instructor can say in that moment that's going to make you feel better. And so for someone to be willing to accompany you through that, the next postpartum journey, through that like really scary season, that's so, so important.
Yeah. And to be sensitive to the fact that this is going to impact their marriage and their marital relationship. And that, Emily and I have talked about this on the podcast before is, I've heard men talk, I've heard different talks, right, to couples. And there's usually some, I don't want to say backhanded because that sounds like it's mean intended, but it's not mean intended. Some story to basically talk to wives about how their husbands need to be having sex and they're very physical and they need to do this. And Emily and I were talking about this once on the podcast. And I was like, the marriage needs physical intimacy because in the Catholic faith, we believe that the marital act is a renewal of our wedding vows. And the renewal of our wedding vows means that that's also bringing us closer to God because God is in our wedding vows. And so really our marriages need physical intimacy. Like we need to be physically intimate to keep the marriage connected and bonded, both partners. Maybe one partner might slightly enjoy it more than the other on a regular basis, but like the marriage itself needs that. And so to your point about, having these prolonged periods of abstinence, that's one thing, but the fear, like to be afraid to have intercourse with my spouse, that is not okay. And in the NFP world, we need to not belittle that to say like, well, you guys can have intercourse, but you might conceive or if someone's experiencing that fear to just kind of say like, oh, well, you don't trust, you're just not trusting God enough or whatever, whatever it is. And I'm so sorry because I'm sure some of those things flew out of my mouth in my early, naive young years as an NFP teacher in my 20s. So anyway, gosh, yeah, so much I'm getting from this conversation that I feel like we could be, doing better. So, okay, so you've started using Marquette. You started learning Marquette so that you could just be a better user of it. And then the Lord brought all these people to you to say, hey, Louise, you have this knowledge and this skill. Now I need you to go and share it with other people. And you lovingly did that, which is amazing to say yes to him. And so now in your teaching, and you're using the monitors, or there's the clear blue monitor. So what I'm hearing you say, and this is a gross summary that's not accurate, correct me, is basically the Marquette method, quote unquote, is using the monitor, but the monitor is not actually telling you when you're fertile or infertile. You as the user with your instructor and these protocols that are evidence-based protocols you're interpreting the data. So
That's right.
it's not quite a just you pee on the stick and you just do whatever the monitor tells you. You have to have some knowledge and understanding that comes from education, working with a teacher, and this evidence behind it in order to use it.
Clearblue did research to see if their monitor would be effective for avoiding pregnancy, because in the UK, Clearblue has a Clearblue monitor and they have a Persona monitor, and the Persona monitor is made for avoiding pregnancy. And it has, I'm trying to remember, I think it's like a 95% effectiveness rate, so a 5% pregnancy rate over a year of use. So Clearblue tried to bring that to the US and it didn't get approved because that wasn't a high enough effectiveness rate. And so they were doing research to see, like, if you just use the monitor backwards, how effective it is. Like, if you just abstain on the high and the peak days, if you have sex on whatever low days you want, and there was a 20% pregnancy over 1 year of use, which is that's a high probability of pregnancy, right? And so with Marquette, we're using the Clearblue monitor as a tool, and Marquette's effectiveness rates, depending on the protocol that you're using, they're about 98% effective. So it's a 2% probability of pregnancy. So if you were just using Clearblue, it would be a 20% chance of pregnancy. If you're using Marquette, it's a 2%. So that's like a significant improvement on the probabilities, right? Yeah. So it is.
So I'm glad you brought that up. I don't want to cut you off but I think that's really helpful, because what I hear you saying is if you're using just the monitor and not using the Marquette method, which is meant to encompass a teacher and all of these things, you're not getting the result. You're not going to get the results that you're looking for.
Right. You're not doing Marquette.
You're not doing Marquette. You're not doing Marquette. That's the way to say it. That's it there. Yeah.
Yeah, I just taught a lady this week and she was like, "Oh, I've done Marquette for 5 years or something." And then I was like, "Oh, who's your instructor? Like what protocols were you following?" And she's like, "Oh no, I was just using the monitor." And I was like, "Yeah, that's not."
I think that is very I feel like that's very common. That's how it gets described, right? I do Marquette, but do you? Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, it's more complicated than just the monitor.
To be honest with you, I'd heard of Marquette, right? Like, oh, Marquette's the hormonal peeing on the stick monitor thing when I first kind of got introduced to other methods outside of Creighton. And I wasn't really aware that there were protocols or there was anything until my younger sister, who was using the postpartum breastfeeding protocol. And she was like, I don't think she wasn't working with a teacher though, if I remember correctly. She had a friend that used Marquette. And then her friend showed her this protocol that was online for postpartum to use with the Clearblue monitor. So that's what she was doing and enjoying it and having success with it. But anyway, that's kind of all. That was the first time I ever thought, like, oh, there's like a sheet to tell you how to use this. That's interesting. I thought you just peed on the stick and did whatever the monitor told you. So I think that's a really important thing for listeners to hear who are not familiar. They just think of it as like the Clearblue monitor. That it's not just the monitor. It's a monitor plus protocols, like how we're interpreting that, which I do love, because I feel like the technology is just still not there yet where we can just, pee on the stick and then whatever the monitor tells us, listen to it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, even if you got a transvaginal ultrasound every day, which is like the gold standard, right? They still wouldn't be able to say exactly 5 days before you ovulate, you're going to ovulate on Wednesday at noon, right?
Exactly
like there is no method that will narrow it down to exactly 6 days of abstinence. It's not possible.
That's great example. Great example.
Right. Now, tell us, I guess, a little bit about the mirror monitor. So that's the other monitor, and people that have been listening to the podcast, I think I'd shared, like, it's what I am using now with my Marquette teacher. It's not, there's research going on that is not yet published, right, about the effectiveness of this new monitor and Marquette protocols. But why don't you talk to us a little bit about the mirror monitor? Because I know so many women are really interested in femtech and using monitors and using devices to help us monitor our cycle. And I get that. I know I've talked to Emily about this before. I've said it before on the podcast of like, it would be really amazing though. Like if AI came out with this wand and I just like scanned it over my body and it said, if you have intercourse within the next 12 hours, you're not going to get pregnant. Thank you. That's all I need to know. Like, with a very high degree of accuracy, like that would be phenomenal. So anyway, why don't you talk to us a little bit about Mira?
Sure. So Mira is, you test your pee with the Mira monitor. It has the capacity to measure 4 different hormones. So it measures estrogen, LH, it can measure progesterone, and it can measure follicle stimulating hormone, which is interesting. The difference between, there's a lot of differences between Clearblue and Mira. So Clearblue is just looking at estrogen and LH, and Clearblue is, qualitative. So it'll give you a low reading if your estrogen levels are low. It'll give you a high as your estrogen levels start to rise. It'll give you a peak when you have your LH surge. So there's only 3 readings it could give you. With Mira, it's just spitting out the actual number. So it'll say like your estrogen is 68, your LH is 2, and your progesterone is 1.3 or something. And that's it. That's all it'll tell you. And so you have to interpret all of that data yourself. So it is measuring the same hormones, right? It's measuring estrogen and LH, but when you have a new device, every device measures something slightly differently, right? So like you can't just say, oh, this is a high estrogen for every single device that exists. You have to really you have to compare the device that you're testing to a device that you know works, or to a transvaginal ultrasound, or to blood work. And then once you've proven that it correlates well, then you can start to develop protocols around that new device. And so like science just takes time. And I think that right now, femtech, we call it femtech, that's like feminine technology. It is just really like cart before the horse. Like there's a lot of devices that are like, we will help you avoid pregnancy. This device is 6 times more accurate than any other device. And like, there is not research backing those claims. And so I think it's really, I have a lot of thoughts about femtech, but I think you just have to be really careful with what you believe, because those companies are really good at marketing, and they're really good at convincing you that like, this is your golden ticket. Like, this is going to make your life so much easier. You just have to pay $300 plus a subscription plan plus the sticks, and they're going to give you all the answers you want. And that there is not any research surrounding those claims. There's market research. There's people saying like, yeah, I had a lot of fun using this. Yeah, this did help me identify my fertile window, but there's not any scientific research looking at like a cohort of women who were using that monitor to avoid pregnancy and how effective was that. That takes a lot of time. So since the Mira monitor came out, Marquette has been researching it. So first they had to make sure that it correlated well with Clearblue. And then they wanted to they started working on provisional protocols. So provisional protocols, like the layman's translation of that would be big fat experiment, which is like, we're pretty sure that this is how it works, but like, we actually don't know how effective it is. So we've been teaching these provisional protocols and recommending that clients use Mira alongside Clearblue. So ideally you would use both monitors, because we know that Clearblue works. And most couples decide not to use both. They decide to just use Mira, and that's, a calculated risk on their part. So what we're doing right now it's called an emulation study. And so we look at people who have used Mira, who have been using Mira under the guidance of a Marquette instructor. And so we're looking back and saying, okay, these people have been using Mira for a year or two. How's it going? How effective has it been for them? Have there been any perfect use pregnancies, any typical use pregnancies with the method? And so right now we're doing an emulation study, looking at the Vitae Fertility population. So any women who learned through Vitae Fertility who opted into the study. And some of the women are just using Clearblue, some are using Mira, some are using Mira and Clearblue. And then we have to analyze the data and break it out into different protocols, because a woman over 2 years might use a lot of different protocols, right? And so we have to break it out into different protocols and see how effective was that specific protocol with that specific device for that specific woman. And then we have to kind of condense the data into an effectiveness summary. So it's in the works, but it just takes a lot of time. And so that's what we're working on right now. But Mira is pretty cool. It'll give you the actual hormone number. My general opinion is you would be surprised how few people need to use Mira. Like Clearblue just really does the trick for the majority of women. There's very few situations where I would just like automatically say, yeah, you should use Mira. There's some women who they use Clearblue, they use LH tests, and they just like can never find their LH surge, because their LH surge is just sad and it's like not high enough to trigger a peak. It's not high enough to trigger a positive LH test. And so for those women, sometimes Mira is helpful. but besides that, generally it's like women, in my opinion, women who are in like the late stages of perimenopause where their hormones are just actually so dysfunctional. It's helpful to see the number value of the hormone to kind of assess where they're at in that transition. And women who are undergoing chemo, those are like my top two where I would say, yes, absolutely, you should do Mira. Anyone else, my general approach is we usually try and start them with Clear Blue because we know that's what works, and we know that it works for most women and it's cheaper. And if it's not working for them, then we transition to Mira. But some people come in and they're like, I want to do Mira, I don't want to do Clear Blue. And so we teach them Mira. But it is really, it's an interesting thing to spend time in, is the Mira data and all of the conversations surrounding Mira, because a lot of the conversations are not accurate to what the research is showing. It's just interesting.
Emily, did you want to say something?
I just wonder, do you think people go into it wanting Mira just because we're so hungry for information, especially couples that are trying to get pregnant, so to speak? So it's almost like, give me everything I can possibly know about my body. I just wonder if that's like...
Yeah, totally. And I think it's a control thing. Mostly I see couples that are trying to avoid pregnancy, but it's like, if you look at the people who come to Marquette, lots of times they come and they're like, they've had a surprise pregnancy with another method, whether it was perfect use or typical use, like they were not expecting that pregnancy to happen. And they're like, okay, I have to do everything I can to not get pregnant. And so they come and they want to do mucus and they want to do temps and they want to do Clear Blue and they want to do LH tests. And I'm like, it's actually not benefiting you to do all of those things. And like the research shows that like the monitor, like the standard Marquette approach is the most effective approach. And so I can teach you all of those things if you want to, but it's going to be a ton more work. It's going to be harder to interpret. There's going to be more abstinence. As you add more bioindicators, there's generally more abstinence, and it's likely not going to make the method any more effective than it already was. And so I think a lot of it is like, people just want to have all the information that they can. But sometimes less is more. Sometimes simpler is actually better. And that's kind of my opinion with Mira, is like, it's really cool. It gives you a lot of information, but like, what are you going to do with that information? And was it actually helpful? Like, it's cool to see your LH, like it goes to 35 or something. And you're like, oh, cool, 35. But like, you got a peak on the monitor. So I don't know. It depends on your personality type, maybe. But
that makes sense.
I think one of the things that I'm thinking about, I think just from this conversation and listening to you speak, Louise, is how we can better I don't believe in selling, because I don't believe you sell the truth, but like promote the truth or talk about natural family planning with people who are preparing for marriage. This is just on the top of my mind because I was talking, Emily knows, like I just started working again with engaged couples on a more regular basis, and it's been a lot of fun. But trying to make sure that you're not painting a false picture, of here's the cycle, which, you only have so much time and people only have so much bandwidth, and like it can be a lot, right? Like not everyone like really loves NFP and like nerds out on this stuff. Okay. We're a select few of us, but just to the general, Catholic couple population. So they know, like, here's kind of the boundaries of like normal, healthy fertility cycling. Like, here's what it looks like. Mm-hmm. But also giving them like at least the sprinkling of seed to know, but there's a lot on the outside of this bell curve that can be going on too. Just so I guess, like, in the case where you're pregnant, maybe when you weren't expecting to be pregnant, it's not a total shocker or a complete disappointment or something that could really, I talked about like kind of the impact it has on the marriage, also like your relationship with God, right? And like, you feel like you had said, Louise, in your own experience, like angry at God, like, what are you doing, God? Like, what are you doing? Like, this is insane. And obviously God's a big boy. He can take it. So I'm not trying to like stand up for him, but it is like, how can we make it so that it just help to quelch the fear, live in reality, but quelch the fear at the same time? I don't know. I feel like that's a a big another aspect maybe of like the ministerial part of being an NFP teacher is you're having to walk with these couples who come to you from a lot of different pasts and are experiencing a lot of different presents. And so how can you be compassionate and kind and honest and hopeful and still be walking with them as they walk in the truth? Because you don't want to be like, well, all right, you just need to get on the birth control pill. Like, we don't want to be doing that, you know?
Yeah. I think I think marriage prep is so important, and it's something that's really lacking. NFP, the introduction of NFP during marriage prep is just really sad in some places how it's done. Generally, when I do it, I always try, because I'm a nurse, it's like informed consent. That's always at top of mind for me. And so I really think like the couple should know what they're getting into. And they can make a decision based on the truth and the facts that are available, right? And so I always start, people are generally just really skeptical about NFP. The marriage prep couples, they're like, oh, just another thing the church is asking us to do. And so I think, first of all, it's helpful to have like someone giving the presentation who's willing to say the word sex without blushing, and who's willing to like actually talk about their journey with NFP in a way that people can really identify with. I think that's like the difference between having like a history teacher when you're in elementary school that's like so boring, or a history teacher that's like, you're not going to believe what happened. Like, it just really changes your experience of it, right? But the way that I usually do it is like, we start with what everyone can agree on, which is like, we have a body, you have an endocrine system, your reproductive system is a part of your endocrine system, and like, this is how your reproductive system works. It's like high school bio, right? Everyone agrees on that. That is not like a contentious subject in the marriage prep circles. Then the next thing we talk about is like, okay, if your body is doing this, you could track these things to figure out what your body is doing. And then they're like, okay, they're following, right? Like, that makes sense. That's logical. And then we talk about the different NFP methods, all of the different NFP methods, not just one, because it's informed consent, right? So these couples need to know, like, you know, when you're tracking your mucus with a mucus method, you're tracking your estrogen levels throughout your cycle. As the egg develops in the follicle, your estrogen levels will rise. You'll notice more mucus. That just makes sense, right? So why wouldn't you track it if you know that it exists? So we talk about all the different methods, and we talk about effectiveness rates, which in my marriage prep, I had a priest that got mad at me, but I have contraceptive effectiveness in my marriage prep slides. And it's not because I promote contraceptives, but it's because in my experience, about 75% of the women at marriage prep are on a contraceptive. Maybe not to avoid pregnancy, maybe because they had acne when they were 14, or because they had really heavy periods, but like, they're on a contraceptive. And so I think, again, informed consent, it's important to know like what your options are. And I think it's really helpful for them to see that if you look at the effectiveness of birth control pill, or if you look at the effectiveness of condoms or withdrawal, it is like way less effective than Marquette. It's less effective than most NFP methods. And so for them to be able to see that of like, okay, there's science backing these methods and there's solid effectiveness rates backing these methods, why wouldn't we use it? And then the next thing I talk about in my marriage prep presentations is contraceptives. And like, yeah, like the church says you can take a contraceptive if you have an underlying hormone imbalance, like if you're taking it for a medical reason. But is that the best option for treating that medical reason? Probably not. And so I always challenge them on that and say, like, this is not helping your body to heal. This is not addressing the root cause of the issue. This is just a big old Band-Aid. And it's really not good for your body. It's not good for your mental health. It's not good for your marriage. It's not good for your body. And it's not good for whatever's going wrong in your body. And then we talk about the theology. So I think it's important to just have like this really real conversation with these couples. These are adults, as you guys say in the US. But like, these are adults and they can make decisions, and like, God has given the ability to think and to reason. And so our job is to give them the information they need to make a good decision. And so that's a really big responsibility for an NFP instructor. And I think that it requires a lot of like honesty and integrity and willingness to talk about really uncomfortable things. But nobody's ever been willing to talk to those couples about uncomfortable things before. And so they appreciate that.
Yes,
when you do
they
it.
do.
So, yeah.
So now the podcast is also going to have Louise as a guest co-host, because Emily and I have said all of these things. We completely agree. Yeah. I mean, I was just talking to my husband the other day, because I've done this presentation a couple of times now. And I was telling Emily, like, gosh, there's things I want to be tweaking now moving forward. And because I think it is so important personally, my thought is you need to know what the church teaches about marriage and family life before you make a commitment to enter into it. And I actually really believe this. I would rather you have full knowledge of what the church teaches and reject it and go get married in the courthouse down the street than just sit there and nod and then walk down the aisle and enter into marriage while still living together and sleeping together and going through mortal sin and never having gone to confession before you receive the sacrament. I think one is better for the soul than the other. It's like, I just don't think that that's good. And I don't think that it's okay for someone to not tell people, here is like the facts. Okay. Here it is. You, again, smart. You're an adult. You can go somewhere else and get married. I don't want you to. I want you to be married here. I want you to accept these things. But you don't have to. It's a lot worse if I feel like we're not giving them the full information and then that responsibility falls on me,
Right, exactly. And I just did, so I sometimes I call it NFP for priests, but I just like meet with priests and talk to them about NFP because they have no idea what they're talking about, right? Like, and it's not their fault. They are so smart and they know so many things, but like they can't be experts in everything. And so I have this presentation I give called NFP for priests. And one of the things, like, priests just don't really, I think they don't, and I could talk about this all day, but
that's why we have a podcast, Louise. That's why we started this.
Well, maybe I should start a podcast. So one of the questions that priests are asking the couples when the marriage starts is, are you prepared to accept children lovingly from God and bring them up into the law of Christ and his church? And the couple is saying yes. But did anyone actually tell the couple what that means?
Oh,
no.
Amen.
Right? And so like, that's our job. And like, that's the priest's responsibility to make sure that the couple really understands what they're getting into. And so if we can help them in that mission to help the couples really see, like, this is beautiful teaching. And like, this is really what God wants for your life. This is what God wants for your marriage. This is what God wants for your family. If we can help them understand that before they get married, that's like the goal. Right? But I think we're failing at that. That's my personal opinion. The church in general is failing at that. And these couples are coming into marriage and they don't know what they're signing up for. And maybe it's because nobody's even told them what they're signing up for. But we're doing them a disservice by not educating them well.
Emily and I have talked about this as far as, the priests that are forming couples is trying to encourage them to say, hey guys, please don't water down our vocation. Please, please, please don't water down our vocation. Please give us the facts. No one tells you as a priest in formation that you have lifestyle requirements when you become a priest. Okay. And you can do things before you become a priest. And then you can only do things once you become a priest. You can't consecrate the host until the bishop lays hands on you when you become a priest. Like that. I just feel like, to have that encouragement from the laity, like, they do need to hear us, though. I mean, it is hard. You're up there every week. You're in this community. Priests are human like us. They want to be loved and liked too. Like, well, we need you to be brave. We need you to be brave and give us the truth and support us in that. And here's resources. We're right here. We've got your back. Like, we can help teach these couples and give you more information. But we need you to be telling everybody, what's the what, right? What are they really getting into? Because I know I've heard before, and Emily, I think we've talked about this before too. It's like when I have heard priests not really address like the cohabitation aspect of a relationship that a couple might be in before they get married. And this is where Emily and I were talking about, like, I need to check like canon law. Like, do they not need to say something? Is this true? Because I've heard this from a couple of priests now of like, well, it's not that big of a deal, or we don't make that big of a deal of it because they're going to right the wrong in a few months once they're married. Like, it's going to all work out beforehand. I'm like, as someone who, like, my husband and I, it would have been a lot easier, especially in the last few months before we got married. If we had lived, like, if he just moved into the apartment with me, it would have worked out really a lot easier. He didn't have to sleep on his friend's couch because he had already sublet his house that he was staying in. Yeah. But we didn't do that because we were told and we believe, like, not until we're married do we get to live together. But here I'm just hearing like, oh, it'll be fine. They're getting married. I'm like, what? So what is it?
Well,
is it?
I'm not a priest and I'm not an expert in that, but I think it goes into the law of gradualism, which is like a whole ethical contract, right? But you're trying to meet people where they're at, and you're looking at what they're doing, and they're saying, and you say, like, are they working towards a good? Like, is there hope for this couple? Is there is it in their best interest to get married in the church? And like, not to say that cohabitating before you get married is a good thing, but to say, like, I can see that this couple is trying to do the right thing. And so you should always approach them with truth and encouragement, right? To say, like, I'm so happy that you're wanting to get married in the church. The church would ask that you abstain from sex until you get married. If they choose to not do that, I think the law, like, I'm not an ethicist, but I know that the law of gradualism definitely is at play in those situations. So maybe you should get an ethicist on your podcast and talk to them.
Yeah, we've had conversations about that before. And definitely that law, I mean, it makes so much sense. It's totally understandable. I think it's just, again, it's similar to what I'm hearing us talk about with people are getting pregnant pre-ovulation without seeing mucus. Well, God must just really want that baby. And we're just like glossing over addressing this issue. And I feel like in this case, it's this, we see this big lie in the culture and this big trend in the culture of just totally neglecting Catholic moral sexual ethics prior to marriage. But, they're heading in the right direction. So we don't want to ruin that because they're heading in the right direction. It's like, that is great. They should continue to like head in the right direction of marriage. And the sweetness of God's mercy is only made sweet when we're aware of the bitterness of our sin. And I feel like to have that, you can hold both of those truths at the same time of, we can encourage this and we can also make known, like, hey, this act is wrong. Like, it is hurting your relationship with each other and with God. And even more so when we believe the gravity of sin it induces a sense of blindness, if you will, and we can't see clearly. Well, I kind of don't want you marrying someone, committing to the whole of your life with someone, if you might be living in blindness. I get that we don't want to discourage, like, how do we hold those two truths, right? Like, I don't want to discourage, but I also, we need to know what the truth is. Like, and I think I feel so convicted. I definitely have to recognize, like, a lot of this is my own journey, but I thrived off of, and my conversion came from people speaking the truth and me being like, whoa, brand new information. I'd never heard this before. Like, thank you for telling me I was living in mortal sin. Like, didn't know that. That's really bad. I don't want to do that anymore.
That's so beautiful.
Just to be like this, well, she's doing the best she can. It's like, I wasn't, because I didn't know I was doing anything wrong. Like, does that make sense?
Yeah, you should always, like, compassionate truth, right? Like, you should always tell the truth in a way that's kind and loving. And I think that like, the law of gradualism would require that, right? Like, you're helping them attain goodness, so you have to tell them what's good and what's not, and you have to know that they're not perfect and they'll probably slip up, and like, they're on their journey towards goodness, but like, they do need guidance on that journey, and so they need a roadmap, and that's what the priest is. So you should never just like say, well, they'll be okay, like, they're getting there. You should always encourage them with truth and kindness. That's my opinion. I'm not an ethicist, but that's my opinion.
Right, for sure. No, it makes a lot of sense. So, okay, I feel like we've covered, a lot of information. It was just like so much fun to talk to you, Louise, but I know we're at the hour mark, so I don't want to take too much more of your time. Maybe you can talk a little bit about now what you do. You kind of run a little Marquette group, and I will share her Instagram handle on the show in the show notes, because I was telling her before we started recording that I just really enjoy her Instagram a lot. And so anyway, tell us, what you do now and how people can reach out to learn more about the Marquette Method, and if there's anything else about the Marquette Method itself that we haven't shared that you want to share.
Okay. I'll tell you a little bit about my organization. So I own Vitae Fertility. I'm the director. We're a group of Marquette instructors. The way that it started, I think I always like to share how it started. So it started, by me just teaching me, and then people started coming, and I taught a lady, and she, at the end, you're like, do you have any questions? And she was like, yeah, can I work with you? And I was like, no, that's weird. Like, I don't do that. I think you're confused. And so I sent her, I was like, you should talk to the Institute. Like, they're the ones that train the instructors. And she's like, okay, well, if ever you change your mind. And I was like, I won't, but thank you. And so then I just like kept teaching. And about a year later, I had like my grandma was dying. So I went to be with her and like help support my mom. And I just had a bunch of clients that I had booked and I couldn't teach them. And so then I reached out to Katie and I was like, are you done your training yet? Because like, actually, maybe you can work with me. And so she started working with me. So it was really like, I think like this whole, like me teaching Marquette, starting Vitae Fertility, this is all Holy Spirit guided. Like I never sat at home and was like, I'm going to do this and it's going to be awesome. It was really just like, okay, God, like, if this is what you want me to do, I'll do it. And I feel like I just like keep walking down a hallway and I don't know which door is going to open next. So you just like keep walking. And when the door opens, you just keep going. Right. And so that's really like, that's how Vitae Fertility was born. And so since then, I've added quite a few more instructors. So there's 17 of us now that work at Vitae Fertility. I call it a collaborative of NFP or Marquette instructors. We have like each instructor is responsible for teaching and following their own clients, but Vitae Fertility is kind of like the umbrella where all of the intake happens. I wrote 2 books. So our clients get the books. We have a regular cycles manual, and we have a breastfeeding manual. So if a woman is breastfeeding,
here, they're so beautiful.
Thank you.
Covers are lovely. Yes,
Those
you're
are
being very humble and modest.
Yeah.
They're very nice.
So
Yeah,
I wrote those with a baby on my back. Again, like very Holy Spirit, right? Like Nora, I was like bouncing a baby on my back while I typed. So it's like it's really humbling to just see like where God has taken this journey. And like who knows where it's going to go next. But so we have vitaefertility.com. That's our website. We have lots of information on there. When I started doing Marquette, I felt like I couldn't find any information. And so one of my missions was like, I'm just going to write good content and put it on the internet. So when people are like, what am I doing? There's going to be like blogs that help them and validate their experiences and help support them with science and help them come to a good decision about what is a good option for them moving forward. So I think the website is just a really good resource for couples who are just exploring NFP, who want to know more about Marquette without actually like learning Marquette. We offer free consultations. So if anyone is like not sure if Marquette's a good option for them, we're happy to talk to them. Sometimes we'll meet with a couple and we'll at the end be like, yeah, Marquette's really not the best option for you. And then we'll help connect them with a method that would be better. So it's not like we're not trying to just like recruit everyone that we talk to. We just really want them to feel comfortable with the decision that they're making. We teach couples and then we follow them for a whole year. So that usually gets them, lots of times couples hire us when they've had a baby. So it kind of gets them through like the postpartum cycle 0, they get their period back, we walk them through cycles, and then we get them feeling really confident with Marquette by the end of that year. So that's our approach. Did that answer your question?
It did, yeah. And maybe you touch a little bit about why does Marquette only have nurses and medical professionals as instructors? Why can't a lay person do it?
For a couple reasons. One of them is your reproductive system is a part of your endocrine system. So it makes sense to have healthcare providers teaching how to navigate your fertility. There's been a lot of times when we have couples that come to us with like complex health stuff and we just like get it. Like we know, maybe we've helped people like that in the hospital before. We know what the medications are. We know how to like look up medications and interactions and things like that. We know how it'll affect the cycle. There's like a different level of critical thinking that comes with being a healthcare provider where like you're on the fly, like diagnosing and treating. And so that it comes in really handy when you're an NFP instructor. And then the other thing is like really a liability thing. We want to make sure that the people teaching Marquette are safe people. They're people that know what they're talking about. And so when you're a Marquette instructor, you do the training through the institute, and then you sit for the certification exam. And so like if you're a nurse, you like go to university, get your bachelor's in nursing, and then you sit for the NCLEX, and then you're an RN. And so that's how it is with being a Marquette instructor. You do the Marquette training, you sit for the certification exam, and then you're a Marquette Method certified professional and MMCP. And so I'm the president of the Marquette Method Professionals Association. So again, I can talk about this all day. But when we're having people apply to join the Marquette Method Professionals Association, we always check if they have professional licensure. And it's okay if it's lapsed, like if you're a nurse and you're like raising kids now, so you're not holding your license, as long as the license was in good standing, because we want to make sure that the people that are coming and teaching Marquette are like good, upstanding people in good standing with their professional organizations, and they're committed to ongoing education and things like that. So that's why we recommend, or that's why we require them to be healthcare providers.
That's great. Yeah. It's unique to a lot of no other method requires that. So I wanted you to touch a base about it, because I think for some people, they might find that to be really important when they're looking for an NFP teacher. Okay. And then the cost, I understand, I mean, at least as a user now of the Marquette Method, I was blown away at the cost. I thought it was so affordable. Because I think it was,
well, we get mixed reviews.
Yeah, I guess it's true. I mean, I think I've been exposed to a lot of different things. So I was like, wow, this feels very affordable for a whole calendar year. I kind of have unlimited access to my teacher should things come up for, under $250, like with all, with the materials that you guys provide.
That's what Vitae charges.
Right.
There are other Marquette instructors, right? We're not the only ones.
Right. Oh yeah.
And there's other Marquette. So generally it is around 250-ish to learn. Depending on the instructor, they'll follow you for longer or shorter than a year. You'll get different resources. You'll get different support. Sometimes there's group classes. Group classes are usually a little bit cheaper. So it just really, some couples, we talk to them and they're like, this is so outside of our budget. It's not even funny. Like, we just can't do Marquette. It's really out of reach. And some couples are like, oh, this is like a no-brainer. And so it really, like, there is such a spread of Catholics looking to use NFP. But yes, we charge $230 at Vitae. And that covers the client for a year of follow-up, and they get the books and they get the support from their instructor. But
it doesn't include monitors, though, for people that
it doesn't
includes instruction, but you do have to pay for monitors and the sticks and things too. So that is one of the things that is a little bit different from a method that doesn't require a device. You don't have to pay for a device or the sticks to use the device. So depending on your budget, to consider that too. So, okay. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I wanted to make sure we covered. Emily,
I have a question. Yeah. So we're talking about, I remember you mentioning that the majority of the couples are trying to avoid a pregnancy. So I'm wondering if you can dispel this, notion that I've often heard. Like, I've often heard Marquette is really great for couples that have normal fertility. I'm just wondering if you might be able to speak on a couple that has struggled with infertility in the past. Maybe they're trying to use Marquette to avoid, or a couple that tries to maybe struggling with infertility and, I'm really actually meaning it more for avoiding. So if they have a history of infertility, does that raise any concerns, or do they still fit the protocols that would be in place?
Marquette.
Sorry, Louise. Can I
ahead.
piggyback on that really quick? Perfect, Emily. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Also, if you just kind of then go into like, you said that sometimes you guys will meet with people and you'll suggest another method. So who is Marquette good for? Yeah, what demographic?
So Marquette is good for almost everyone, is my biased answer.
Sure.
It's good. Like, in regular cycles, it's easy peasy. Like, it is just, you could just turn your brain right off and use Marquette.
And let's clarify what that means for the listener in case people don't know what we mean when we say regular cycles. So we're talking about women who are ovulating like once a month. It's very predictable. They have, menstrual bleed that's healthy. They have days of infertility. They have their ovulation day, and then they are infertile again till the next cycle, and just kind of repeat the pattern. Pretty boring.
Yeah. If you're cycling, if you're not breastfeeding, if you're not perimenopausal, there is women. So with Marquette, regular cycles is like if you're not breastfeeding, if you're not perimenopausal, if you're not undergoing chemotherapy, essentially. Like, if you're cycling and there's not anything impeding your ovulation, there is special circumstances within regular cycles. So that would be like women with PCOS, women with fibroids, things like that. They still would technically be considered a regular cycling woman, but their cycles are irregular in length. And so we, as with all methods that are tracking your actual bioindicators, we're able to see on a chart like what's out of balance. So if there's women who have had infertility before, or if there's a known underlying health condition, we can, within a month or two or a cycle or two of charting, we can look at their chart and see like, what are the trends? What are the patterns? What's out of balance? Where are the flags on this cycle? Is there anything that we're concerned about? And then we can help refer them to a doctor in their area who can help. We can help like dissect the chart and say like, this is what I'm seeing on your chart. It looks like your progesterone levels are low, or it looks like you're having a delayed ovulation, or you're having a lot of bleeding that we wouldn't expect to normally see on a cycle. And so we can, it's not a problem if women have irregular cycles when they're using Marquette. I think that Marquette really shines in the postpartum transition, in the breastfeeding transition, because mucus becomes really confusing when you're breastfeeding. It can become really confusing. Some women have no problem with it. And Marquette just like clears up all the murky and makes it a really smooth process for the postpartum transition. So that's when I find most, and this is just my own experience, but most couples come to Marquette when they're breastfeeding. They've already done a method and they're like, okay, now I'm breastfeeding, so I don't know what I'm doing. Like mucus doesn't make sense. I don't want to abstain forever. And so they start doing Marquette. And then usually once they start doing Marquette, they stick with it. So they go through the postpartum transition and then they go into regular cycles and then they just continue on with Marquette. But Marquette has it's easy to see underlying hormone imbalances on a Marquette chart, similar to a Creighton chart. Like you can see what's out of balance, right? Like if you know what you're looking for, you can see what's out of balance generally quite quickly, and you can flag that as abnormal. So Marquette works for mostly everyone.
That's great. That's great to know. That's great.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I do think it's so interesting. Do you guys have, I know you said you have a lot of couples that are trying to avoid, and maybe because you have a lot of couples that are, in the postpartum phase when they're like, yeah, I'm not trying to get pregnant right now. Yeah. But do you have experiences too, where you've had a good amount of couples that are trying to achieve? Because I think Emily would say almost all of her clients are couples who are struggling with infertility. It seems like couples who are struggling to get pregnant, navigate more towards like Creighton and NaPro, or Fem. But then whenever I hear about avoiding, I feel like that's where I hear the Marquette demographic.
Yeah, I hear that too. I like really the majority of my clients are trying to avoid. We do get the odd couple, not the odd, the occasional couple who is trying to get pregnant. They've been trying for a while. Sometimes they're clients of ours where like they had a baby, they navigated postpartum successfully, and now their baby's 1.5 years and they're trying to get pregnant and they're not successful. And so we do have experience in helping them navigate that. It's again, like we're looking for what's out of whack on their chart, what's abnormal, what could be the underlying issue. And we generally work to address that. I've had women, I had a lady, she's the one that comes to mind for me. She was engaged when I taught her. So I just taught her like standard Marquette. Her cycles were a little bit wacky. And then they just started they were like totally out to lunch. By the time she got married, they were like, she was peaking so late in her cycle. Her peaks were super irregular, like really unpredictable when the peak was going to happen. So I recommended that she get a polycystic ovarian syndrome workup done. I didn't know, you never really know what people have, right? But a PCOS workup is a good place to start because it's a diagnosis of elimination. And so if you're not sure what's going on, if you start eliminating things, it narrows it down pretty quickly. And she ended up having PCOS, but she also found out she was type 1 diabetic. And that's why her cycles were so wacky. And so they started her on insulin because that's what she needed. And then her cycles normalized. And then they were able to achieve pregnancy, but they were able to just avoid in the season where they needed to avoid. And when they were ready to get pregnant, her cycles were healthy and she was ready for a pregnancy. So they were able to succeed. But there's a medical component to fertility, right? It's a symptom of your body. Your cycle is showing you what's going on in your body. And so it's important to have the right tools to be able to interpret that.
For sure. Yeah. It is that fifth vital sign. Yeah. I find it really exciting to hear people talk positively about using a method confidently during the postpartum phase, because I know for a lot of women that I've spoken to, they don't want to get pregnant right now. And I feel like that's kind of a sensitive thing for a Catholic person to say, or maybe just any Christian woman to say, is like, is it okay for me to say, I don't want to be pregnant right now? And my answer would be yes, it's okay. And it's okay to ask for help. And it's okay to feel frustrated if the method you're using requires all days be abstinent days.
Right.
And it's like, well, I don't want to have a baby right now, but I would really like to like have sex with my husband before my first period comes back too. And so is that possible? And it's hopeful to hear like, well, we're having a lot of success over here using the Marquette Method. And so the Marquette Method might be a really great option for you. So anyway, that's one of my biggest hopes is that people will hear it. And if they don't need it right now, they can pass it on to somebody else that, think might benefit from it. But to hear this information, to know like, hey, there's an evidence-based method that can support you in this season of life, because as we shared at the beginning when we started recording is that, every the best method is whatever method works best for you in this time of your life. And so anyway, I'm really grateful, Louise, that you were on to share all this wonderful information with us. And I will link to your website, which is also beautiful. Her Instagram handle is beautiful. Her website's also beautiful. Her books are beautiful. All the work you're doing, it's just really wonderful. And it's so cool to hear your story. I always love hearing stories where, we're doing something because out of need and out of a necessity for ourselves. And then the Lord uses it to bring other people in, even though it's kind of like, well, no, I'm not really looking for extra responsibility. Like, you don't understand that I was doing this just for me. Like, I don't really want, to do it for anybody else. So, but it's very valiant of you that you were able to use the gifts and the skills you were given to help others. As we wrap up here, maybe I would like to know, like, what were you planning to do as a nurse? Did you want to be like an emergency room nurse? What did you do as a nurse?
Well, what I really envisioned for my life was I worked on neurotrauma, which is like so exhausting and so much, like it is so hard. It's like these people are having a very difficult season in their life. But my plan was to just like have babies. We wanted to have 4 kids. So we were going to, in my perfect, when we were engaged and we're like, what is our life going to look like? We were going to be married, have 4 kids, and I would just work like 1 or 2 days a week at the hospital, just like PRN, like as needed. I wouldn't have like a full-time job. So that's all I ever wanted, was just to like be a mom and also be a nurse, because it's really fulfilling, but not a full-time nurse because that's too much work. Being a mom is a full-time job. So that's really what I pictured for my life. And this is like, but to me, it's so funny because like God is just honoring that dream of ours to have like, I still get to do like nursing thing, but it's like I didn't even dream of this, right? Like nobody is like an 8-year-old and they're like, I'm going to be an NFP instructor when I grow up. And so this is like, like I had no idea this was even an option, but I still do. Like I get to be a full-time mom. I work when my kids are at school. And I get to just like really reach these couples that are so vulnerable and in need of this education. And I'm able to meet that need for them. And so it's like, it's just so fun. It's such a blessing to be a part of that. And it's really, like whenever I finish with a client, I'm like, oh man, like those are so good. And so, it's a really beautiful thing to just be following God's plan for your life and just watching the fruits. So
for sure.
That's cool.
Yeah. And how it all unfolds. That's so great. Yeah. That's so great. Yeah. Okay. Well, if you're looking for Marquette, looking for information on the method, follow her on Instagram or look at the website, get more information. Again, 17 practitioners that are working underneath you or as a group. That's just so awesome. So awesome.
Can I just say one more thing?
Yeah. Oh, sure.
So this is like, I run Vitae Fertility, but like, if you want to learn Marquette, learn Marquette. It doesn't have to be through Vitae Fertility. Like, I just think it's so important. No, but I think it's so important for people to know that, like, again, it's informed consent. Like, there are so many options for learning Marquette. There might be a local option. There might be someone at your church who teaches Marquette.
That's true.
We have a directory. The Marquette Method Professionals Association has a directory of certified instructors. It's marquettemethod.com. We'll put it in the notes. But if you're looking for an instructor, you can come talk to us. We'd be happy to teach you, but there might be an instructor local to you. And I think it's always good to just get local instruction if you can get local instruction. It's all over Zoom, so it's kind of the same, but it just feels different to learn from someone who like you might see at the store, right?
That's true.
So I think it's important for people to know that, like, yeah, Vitae Fertility is pretty cool, but there is a lot of Marquette instructors and we're all working towards the same mission. And so we'll put a link to that in the notes.
Yep. I'll link to all of that so people can choose with whom they would like to work. That is a very good thing. So thank you so much, Louise, for your time. And we look forward to having you back on the podcast. Maybe just a little like teaser, I guess, for people. You were recently at the USCCB giving a talk on something. We're going to have Louise back on to talk more about that, but go ahead and share with us a little bit about what you did.
Sure. So Sarah Flood, who's another Marquette instructor, she doesn't work at Vitae Fertility. She's the past president of the Marquette Method Professionals Association. Her and I worked together to develop the code of ethics for the MMPA. And while we were developing the code of ethics, we really kind of like unearthed this huge, I don't know, like a minefield of ethics and femtech. And so in our development of the code of ethics, we started navigating this, like, what does it look like to be a Catholic person using a femtech device that doesn't adhere to Catholic values? And so we gave a presentation in conjunction with Dr. Mary Schneider, who's at the Boland Institute for NFP. We gave a presentation for the USCCB, and it was talking about ethics and femtech. And so Sarah and I will come back and we'll tell you all. We could talk about this, like we talked about this for years, so we can definitely fill a podcast with it. But it's going to be really fun. So.
Awesome. Yeah. So be listening for that in the coming weeks too, everybody. So yeah, thanks so much, Louise. And take care. God bless on everything you're doing. Great work.
All right. Thank you.
That wraps up another episode of the NFP podcast. Thank you so much for joining us today. We hope you found our discussion enlightening and empowering. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. We'd love to hear from you. Please connect with us by sending us an email with your questions and stories to thenfpshow@gmail.com. We'll be back next week with more insights, tips, and heartfelt conversations about natural family planning. Until then, love responsibly.